And Cassie Ventura, she is one of Combs' many accusers, testifying as a central witness.
Is she ready?
Very ready and confident. Thank you.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her.
They once called him a music mogul, a kingmaker, the ultimate hip-hop success story. Yesterday, as Cassie Ventura took the stand, that image shattered. Diddy sat motionless as his ex detailed disturbing allegations that left even veteran courtroom reporters stunned. The man who once ruled the industry couldn't hide his discomfort. Cassie didn't hold back. She laid everything bare, recounting what allegedly happened behind closed doors. And just like that, the empire began to crack in real time.
Sean Combs. She said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on to the lighting in the room to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate what is a freak off, the freak off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21. She was young. She didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend. Combs has pleaded not guilty. His attorneys argue the video is evidence of jealousy, not sex trafficking. And now for the first time, jurors are hearing what Cassie has to say about
Sean Diddy Combs moved through the music industry like he owned it. Because in many ways, he did. The man built Bad Boy Records from the ground up, turned unknown artists into chart-topping stars, and created a brand that reached far beyond hip-hop. From fashion to vodka to media, Diddy wasn't just making music. He was making serious money. He was celebrated as a mogul, a mentor, a visionary. But as Cassie Ventura took the stand in court, that polished public image began to unravel fast. While magazines praised his business acumen and fans admired his red carpet charisma, Cassie was allegedly living a very different life behind closed doors. And now, for the first time, the world was hearing her version. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as she spoke. The contrast between the man the public knew and the man she described too sharp to ignore. Diddy arrived for day 2 of the trial, looking every bit the billionaire executive, sharp suit, immaculate grooming, flanked by a high-powered legal team. He smiled at familiar faces, nodded with confidence. From a distance, you might think he was heading into a boardroom, not a courtroom where serious allegations were being leveled against him. But that confidence didn't last long. Within the first 30 minutes of Cassie's testimony, witnesses described a visible transformation. The swagger faded. His polished exterior began to crack. As Cassie detailed specific incidents from their 10-year relationship, Diddy's demeanor shifted completely. He grew restless, fidgeting with his tie, then his cufflinks, and eventually just his hands. His attorneys rose repeatedly to object, clearly trying to halt the narrative, one that was quickly spinning out of their control. Observers in the courtroom noted how Diddy, the man who once controlled careers and dictated trends, was now scribbling notes at a frantic pace and passing them down his legal team. At one point, an attorney even raised a hand to slow him down. One court reporter described the moment as watching someone realize, in real time, that they no longer had control of the narrative they had curated for decades. Others said Diddy looked physically shaken, his face pale, his posture tense. A few even saw him close his eyes multiple times, as if trying to shut out the words being spoken from the witness stand. But there was no shutting it out. Cassie was calm, direct, and unflinching as she recounted the details of their relationship. And this, everyone in the courtroom knew, was only the beginning. As Cassie's testimony continued into the afternoon, the room braced itself for the deeper revelations. What she was about to allege, according to insiders, would not just shake the courtroom, but potentially send shockwaves through the entire music industry. The legacy that Diddy had spent decades building was now teetering on the edge. For the first time, the man who always controlled the story was facing a version he couldn't rewrite, spin, or produce. And based on the expression on his face, it was clear. He knew it.
Looked forward to the freak-offs. Why did Cassie express looking forward to these said freak-offs?
When the prosecution asked her, was there ever a time that you enjoyed the freak-offs? This is when Cassie got choked up, and she said, I did, but only because I got to spend one-on-one time with Combs, and I really did love him.
And that is speaking to the psychological abuse, in addition to the physical abuse that she potentially experienced.
Yeah, she's definitely laying out someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have this record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment, led by Sean Combs, and basically describes being enamored by Sean Combs, loving him, not knowing about certain things sexually, and him sort of telling her, teaching her about that. And what you hear is someone that was young and she even said, you know, I was young, I was naive, I didn't know any better. But she's really telling the story of someone who thought she was going to be with someone in this music industry that was going to help her career, that cared about her, but quickly learned after the freak-offs that wasn't the case. And what I thought was also interesting is she said that after that first freak-off, she said she felt dirty. She didn't want to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freak-offs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled in the email because Combs responded by saying, I know, you don't want to do it. And she said, oh, no, well, it's not that. But that was the beginning. That was in 2010, where she brings up in an email that she wanted to have a conversation about this. And in her words, she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had to do it.
Well, Diane, prosecutors have wasted no time getting right into the alleged abuse that Cassie Ventura says she endured for years. Ventura telling jurors, quote, he would bash my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head when I was down. She also got into the nature of those so-called freak-offs, saying that they involved hiring an escort and they performed under the direction of Combs, saying that they had.
When Cassie Ventura took the stand, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone in that courtroom knew this moment was coming, but no one, not even Diddy's powerhouse legal team, was truly prepared for what she was about to reveal. After years of silence, after holding it all in behind the scenes of red carpets and photo ops, Cassie finally had her moment, and she didn't waste it. She started slowly, deliberately. That's what made it so powerful. Like a suspense film, where the tension creeps in before the real horror begins. Cassie began with how she met Diddy. She was just 19 years old, a hopeful model dreaming of a music career. He was already a multi-millionaire with his hands in every corner of the entertainment industry. According to her, the power imbalance was obvious from the start, and Diddy knew exactly how to use it. Her testimony unfolded piece by piece. First, came the early warning signs, the constant control. She alleged that Diddy demanded to know her location at all times, and would appear out of nowhere if she was out with friends. Then came the career manipulation. Cassie claimed he would threaten to shelve her music if she didn't meet his demands, and he allegedly sabotaged collaborations with other artists if he felt threatened or disrespected. Then came the moment that truly stunned the room. Cassie testified that Diddy had installed tracking software on her phone. She described how he would call her minutes after arriving somewhere, already knowing where she was. She claimed he gradually isolated her, cutting her off from friends, dismantling her support system one person at a time until he was the only one left. The judge was forced to call for order 3 separate times during this portion of her testimony. Diddy, visibly agitated, couldn't keep still. He shook his head, whispered loudly to his attorneys, and made exaggerated facial expressions, reactions the jury could clearly see. The judge warned him repeatedly, and each time, he'd regain composure for a few minutes before losing it again. It was the image of someone used to controlling everything, and now losing grip on the narrative in real time. Then came a turning point that changed the entire direction of the trial. Cassie pulled out her phone and handed it to her lawyer. They began projecting text messages and emails onto a courtroom screen. Diddy's face, according to multiple witnesses, turned pale. The messages were damning. Alleged apologies for violent behavior, veiled threats about her career, emotional manipulation in black and white. These weren't vague memories. These were receipts, and they directly contradicted the public denials his PR machine had pushed for years. But the most chilling part of Cassie's testimony was still to come. She began to recount specific incidents of alleged physical abuse. The room went still. Cassie described being shoved against walls during heated arguments, One story involved being pushed down a flight of stairs at a rental property in Miami. The most horrifying details came next. Multiple occasions, she claimed, when Diddy choked her until she went limp, only stopping when she could no longer fight back. Jurors were visibly shaken. One older woman on the panel wiped away tears. A male juror avoided looking at Diddy altogether as the graphic testimony continued. Even the most hardened court reporters, people who had covered murders and high-profile trials, admitted they were not prepared for what Cassie described in such haunting detail. And all of it, everything she had just revealed, was just the build-up. What Cassie was about to share next, involving a hotel incident that would blow the entire case wide open, hadn't even been touched yet. The courtroom was only beginning to realize just how dark this story would get, and how far the fall could be for one of hip-hop's most powerful
in prior lawsuits, but to hear her on the stand actually giving those details, reliving those moments herself. Also, you have to remember, she's very pregnant right now. So I'm going to be curious to see how long she makes it on the stand, how she
described the details of the freak-off and why she did it. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Sean Combs, that's when she broke down. Up until that point, she had just been answering the questions. She's a little soft-spoken at times, made him happy.
What did the expressions of the jurors look like?
The jurors are laser focused on what Cassie has to say. And that's to be expected, right? Because she is the person who will likely be on the stand, according to attorneys, for 2, maybe 3 days. She's the one that was in the relationship with Sean Combs for over 10 years. So she's got a lot to say, and she's just getting started.
Just how important is Cassie's testimony to the prosecution?
I think it really connects the dots, Rachel. When you look at that initial indictment and what's being alleged, she really is the person that has probably the most information about that sort of connects it back to this alleged criminal enterprise. Are 7 photos of people that were very close to Sean Combs, one even his former chief of staff. And these were all people that Cassie Ventura was able to name and explain the functions in terms of what they did: security, driver, chief of staff, someone that handled financials. So it's showing that she knew some of these people again.
I thought I was going to die that night, Cassie said, her voice barely above a whisper. The entire courtroom leaned forward, straining to hear every word. She was describing an incident at the Four Seasons Hotel. Something no one had ever heard before. Not the press, not the fans, not even the most relentless gossip, blogs. This story had been buried for years, locked away out of fear. Fear for her safety, her career, and the overwhelming fear that no one would believe her over a man as powerful as Diddy. But now, sitting on the witness stand, Cassie wasn't holding back. According to her testimony, what started as a typical industry after-party spiraled into a nightmare. She recounted how Diddy became enraged after seeing her in conversation with another music executive. His smile disappeared. He allegedly grabbed her arm with so much force it left visible marks. All the while, she claimed, he maintained his charming public persona in front of the crowd, whispering threats into her ear through clenched teeth. Then came the part that left the room stunned. Cassie testified that Diddy dragged her through the hotel lobby, pulling her by the arm toward the elevators. She was crying and trying to resist, creating enough of a scene that hotel security intervened. But when the guard recognized Diddy, he reportedly asked if everything was okay, then walked away when Combs calmly said yes. He didn't even ask if I was okay, Cassie told the court. The prosecution followed up with hard evidence. Cassie's attorney presented a series of photographs she had taken of herself the next morning. Bruises on her arms, a split lip, red marks around her neck. These weren't high-quality professional photos. They were raw, taken in a bathroom, mirror, blurry and uneven, which only made them feel more real. Cassie said she took them because she knew no one would believe her without proof. Diddy's legal team immediately objected, fighting hard to keep the images from being shown to the jury. They argued the photos weren't authenticated, that they could have come from another time, and that they hadn't been disclosed during discovery. But the judge denied every objection. The photos were displayed,
That this wasn't blackmail, this was not coercion, this was consensual. We know that Cassie started out with Sean Combs as an early person, with someone who is trying to get her career started, and he was going to help her. That's what the defense is going to say, that she was starting out and wanted someone to support her. They did their first record deal together. That's something I think the defense is going to focus on, and had it not been for Sean Combs, she wouldn't be where she is right now. The prosecution obviously is saying he was in control. It may have started out as a consensual. It may have started out with her being excited about seeing him, but ultimately he took control of that relationship. He took control of her career. This is their key witness, and she's on that stand trying to explain all of the charges that the prosecution wants to hit home with that jury.
No, there was a moment early on when Cassie mentioned Dallas Austin, who she called a friend who's a producer. So I don't know if that's someone that we're going to hear from. We know that there were pictures shown to prospective jurors that are well-known celebrities, you know, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Lauren London. We don't know, though, how they fit yet into why they were even asked, do you know these people, and got a chance to, I mean, that might change based on the timing. But, you know, because she's such a key witness, it's likely that she will be on that stand the rest of the day. We learned that Cassie referred to him as Pop Pop, and Sean Combs would refer to her as CC. The prosecution says, what does CC stand for? She said, don't really know. We know that they've been instructed to be fair and impartial. As to what type of witness she's coming off as, she's describing someone that she was, totally different person. But even in describing what was going on at her at that time, taking drugs, trying to please Sean Combs, she's really just sort of laying out the case for her not having a lot of control. So I think that's the takeaway. This is someone who is making it very clear that at that particular time in her life, she says she did not have any control really over what she wore, what she did, who she was having sex with. She's a different person now. But I think when she talks about those details and even reflecting on them for herself, as we saw today.
On the courtroom screens, the jury's reaction was instant and visceral. One female juror covered her mouth in shock. Two male jurors averted their eyes, unable to look. A juror in the back row began writing furiously, her hand visibly shaking. This was the bombshell no one had expected. The Four Seasons incident had never been mentioned in any prior court filings or statements. Diddy's team had no prepared defense, and the panic on his attorneys' faces made that crystal clear. And the revelations kept coming. Cassie testified that Diddy had thrown a champagne bottle at her during the ordeal, narrowly missing her head as it exploded against the wall. She described how he destroyed the hotel room in a rage, smashing a lamp, flipping a table, and punching a hole through the bathroom door. The most chilling part? She said he held her in that hotel room for more than 48 hours. He allegedly took her phone and threatened her with serious consequences if she called for help or tried to leave. As Cassie wrapped up this portion of her testimony, the entire courtroom turned to look at Diddy. His face, his posture, his reaction. That moment, caught in stunned silence, may end up defining the entire trial and the legacy of a man who once seemed untouchable. Clips Sean, Diddy Combs, music mogul, media powerhouse, the man who built an empire on charisma and unshakable composure, completely unraveled in front of everyone. For decades, he had carefully crafted a public image. The smooth-talking businessman, the untouchable hitmaker, the mogul who never sweated, never lost control. But as Cassie Ventura's devastating testimony reached its most damning points, that polished mask began to crack and then shattered completely. Court reporters, some of whom had covered the biggest celebrity trials in recent memory, later said they had never witnessed anything quite like it. What they saw in that courtroom was the transformation of a man, once towering and composed, into someone visibly cornered and desperate. As Cassie continued detailing her years-long relationship with Diddy, the power dynamic between them reversed in real time. She spoke calmly, steadily. He, on the other hand, seemed to shrink in his seat with every passing allegation. Observers in the gallery noticed how Diddy kept shifting uncomfortably, clenching his jaw, whispering furiously to his lawyers. It got to the point where one of his attorneys, visibly alarmed, kept putting a hand on Diddy's arm in an attempt to calm him. At one point, a note was passed to him with a single instruction written in all caps: "Stay calm." but it wasn't working. Everything boiled over when Cassie described an incident at Diddy's home in the Hamptons. According to her, it had been one of the most terrifying nights of her life. She recounted how an argument escalated into violence, how Diddy allegedly threw objects at her, screamed threats, and punched a wall inches from her face. As she spoke, Diddy slammed his hand on the defense table with such force that the sound echoed through the courtroom. Gasps filled the room. The judge didn't hesitate. He halted proceedings and sternly warned, "Mr. Combs, if you cannot control yourself, I will have you removed from this courtroom." For a moment, it looked like he actually might be. Diddy looked stunned, caught in a rare moment where his usual confidence had completely collapsed under the weight of public accountability. The jury was watching every movement, every facial twitch, every reaction, and Diddy was giving them a front-row seat to his unraveling. Throughout Cassie's testimony, witnesses observed Diddy mouthing, "That's not true," over and over again. He shook his head. He scoffed. He looked toward the ceiling in disbelief, completely, ignoring the fact that a jury of everyday people was reading his body language like a billboard. One court observer summed it up best. It was like watching a man who's never been called out before, realizing for the first time he can't control the narrative. And then came the breaking point. Cassie began to talk about the threats. She testified that Diddy had not only controlled her life, but also allegedly threatened her family if she ever dared speak out about their relationship. The courtroom was already tense, but what happened next shifted the entire trajectory of the trial. She had proof. Cassie's attorney revealed they had audio recordings, taped conversations where Diddy's voice could allegedly be heard making threats. The court grew still. The moment the first clip began to play, Diddy lost it. He shot up from his seat and shouted directly at Cassie, "You know that's not how it happened!" Pandemonium erupted. His lawyers leapt to their feet and physically tried to pull him back into his chair. 3 attorneys had to restrain him as he continued trying to speak over the recording, which echoed through the courtroom like thunder. The judge immediately called for a recess, but the damage was already done. Everyone saw it. The jury, the press, the court officials. The man who had once seemed invincible, an untouchable icon, had just proven how touchable he really was. When security escorted Diddy out of the courtroom, he looked like a completely different person than the one who had strolled in that morning. The polished mask he'd worn for